Dishonorable Mention is brought to you by 813area.com. 813area.com is the place to go to see where to go and what to do in all of Hillsborough County. Whether it's the best events, the newest restaurants, or where to be in Tampa Bay, 813 Area is your resource for everything happening around town. For the latest on where to be in 813, check out 813area.com. Dishonorable Mention is now on social media. Follow us on Facebook, and we're at Dishonorable Pod on Twitter too. Next week, we'll start taking questions from Twitter because y'all have been an amazing part of this. Thank you. Aren't we so fun? We're nice people.
Spirit animal? Are we doing our high school?
I have a
Can we give a
list.
special shout out to our first person that has ever watched us live?
Audience member.
Yeah, we're gonna get to him. By the way, we're
What?
We're absolutely getting to
What
him.
are we doing? We're having Ray
All
on?
right.
We should
All
totally
right.
have Ray on, can't we?
Yeah, we're absolutely going
Oh,
to do that.
fun.
All right, so we're gonna do a couple questions first, though.
Okay.
Hi, it's Colin. I am here to answer all of your questions. Guys, we talked about the mayor's race in Tampa. Jane Castor got, I think, 48% of the vote. David Straz got 20%. In one of the citywide districts, John Dingfelder got 49%. And Steve Lytle, who Carl and I went to college with, got like 20. Why don't we just go to ranked choice voting? Because it would make this a heck of a lot easier. We wouldn't have to have this extended primary. We could just rank choice all of these candidates. And then once somebody gets to 50%, that becomes a candidate. It does two things. One, it allows you to vote your heart. Because if there's some candidate out there that you don't really think has a chance, but can still possibly get over the hump, if you vote for that person first, and then the candidate you kind of think is going to win second, you're in a ranked choice system. The bottom person drops off.
So it's like sorority bid matching?
It is like sorority bid matching, but are people, I'm not trying to be, are people savvy enough to be able to understand that system? Because I'm not sure.
So they've gone to it in Maine, and I think in one
Maine has like 5 people.
Right, but they've gone to it in Maine, and it is under federal court challenge right now, but it looks like the challenge is going to hold, so it's going to be allowed to use for federal elections. It's done in Europe. It's done in coordination with proportional representation in countries like Germany.
Oh, yeah, smart. Florida. Not so much.
I'm with Carla. I am not convinced the Floridian has the wherewithal, the savvy to do that kind of voting, Colin. I'm my God, we are still struggling. In 2018, we still struggle with having a fair and accurate election system. I mean, every expert says our U.S. Senator right now should be Bill Nelson, save for a bad ballot design in Broward County. I mean, before we can go to that, we got to fix a lot more things.
The supervisor of elections in Broward County belong to what party?
She belonged to the Democratic Party.
She was elected.
I'm not suggesting conspiracy. I'm just telling you that the bad ballot favored Governor Scott, whether it was intentional or unintentional. It favored Governor Scott in his run against Bill Nelson.
And George W. Bush was president in large part to the incompetence of the Broward and Palm Beach supervisor of elections at the time back in 2000, who had the butterfly ballot, and then that caused a bunch of Jewish Democrats to vote for Pat Buchanan as their presidential
I thought
choice.
we decided that even with that, he still would have won.
He only won by 537 votes.
I think the real
So the
takeaway
absentees
here
weren't
maybe Colin is onto something. Maybe he's not, but clearly we need more civics in the schools and less Bible study.
There is a bill this year to teach civics, I believe, in middle schools.
Wait, they don't teach civics in the middle schools? No wonder we're
to
fucked.
make it mandatory.
Wait, civics isn't mandatory in middle schools?
My son's taking American history in the fall. Advanced American
I'll
history.
get you
He's
the
gifted.
information on that bill. I was not the.
Okay.
It is in
Just-
Hillsborough.
Okay, good. Okay. Just checking.
I'd just like to point out the lead columnist of the Tampa Bay Times thinks Floridians aren't smart enough to be able to rank people in an election. So moving on, what is your political spirit animal? If you had to have one person in charge of your local, statewide, and federal government, sort of like an all-knowing, all-being,
oh my God, that's a terrible
just
question.
sort of a czar of all things political, going across the country, whom would that be for you?
I got to go with Barack Obama, but I'm biased. He mentioned my grandmother in his election night speech in 2008. So I'm never letting Barack go. And my number 2 choice would be Michelle.
Oh, what was my number 1?
Oh, my bad. Becca, go.
No, I'm not ready. I'm just not ready. If I have to pick one, and it's probably not fair to pick somebody who's judicial.
Chris Lotbauer.
You're definitely on the list. But like in sorority bid matching, it's a mutual selection process. I mean, I do think Ruth Bader Ginsburg is probably one of the most political, most important voices on the issues of the day. So if I had to take a cue from anybody across federal, state, everything, that's what door I'm knocking on.
So this will sound like I'm very much sucking up because it would be a colleague of mine who's slated to be the speaker in a couple years. But it would be Chris Sprouse, who's currently a representative in Pinellas, and he'll be our speaker in the House in 2020. Because I've known him for 15 years or so. I know the caliber of individual he is, and also he's one of the smartest people I know. And having said that, hopefully I'll get a very nice parking spot in 2020 at the Capitol in a nice office. If I had to look throughout history, I would say Ronald Reagan, because he's one of my political heroes.
Doctor?
Oh, God. I would say, and this is hard because I feel like I see value in like so many different types of people.
Of course.
So it's a
made
hard
the question
question.
impossible.
So are you going to say David Straz as your
I would
answer?
say DuckTales. Woo. I think I would say a combination of Reagan, Clinton, and Michelle Obama, if that's even possible. Because I think there's some really valuable traits. Reagan was awesome in terms of
Bill or Hillary?
Bill. Just checking. I love that we had that conversation. Is that cool? Like you're not really sure which one you're talking about. I think that's pretty cool. I think we live in a, because I'm a like a Gen Xer cusper kid. So my Clinton is Bill Clinton, but for other kids coming up, youngins like Chris, even though we're the same age, when I say Clinton, he might think Hillary. So that's cool. I think that's like a really cool moment.
Not the Republicans are obsessed enough with Hillary where they put her first. So congratulations, Hoop, on the correct answer. That
was a hard question. It's kind of a shitty question. I don't like that question. Don't do that again.
The man,
don't do it again.
The man literally had everything working against him in his presidency. He was black. He had a funny name.
I love how you say he was
me,
black, as if he's opted out.
Funny name.
He went back to his mom's side.
But like he literally had and the slightest hint of scandal, anything, literally 1/1000th of what we've seen over the last 2 years would have run his presidency into the ground.
Do you mean if he had been signing Bibles in Alabama?
Can you imagine on the cover?
So did
That
I
was
ever?
weird. Can we
He
pause
wore
that
a
for like
tan
1
suit,
second?
and it was a 3-day story.
He was wearing, okay, Donald Trump literally signed both Bibles and boobs in Alabama.
No, let me ask you a question.
Yeah,
Did anyone ask him to do that, or did he just walk in and be like, "All right, everybody, here you go"? Like, what? Could someone put some context around that story for me? Because I wasn't paying attention.
Well, it was weird.
I just saw the visual, and I was like, "Huh, holy shit, he's really doing that." Okay, but I mean, did someone say, "Hey, sir, can you please sign my Bible?" Because that's a very different thing than walking in and be like, "And you get a Bible, and you get a Bible."
And I will say that it is unique that, and this is from the token Republican on the podcast, that he signed Bibles with the same signature that he signed hush money for porn stars, so his wife wouldn't find out that he was having an affair.
I don't think she cared.
So
Isn't he defacing the Bible by doing that? I mean, isn't that like some violation of Christian doctrine?
Yeah, that's a violation of perhaps the idolatry rule that's in there.
You got to put that in your Bible bill, that if you're going to do that, you cannot sign Bibles. That is wrong. You have to teach the children.
You guys talk about weed and how now that it's acceptable, white people can just sort of like make this go away. And unfortunately, they're also making all the money from it. There is a bill, I believe, in New York State to help the emerging marijuana industry, where the licenses for that will go more towards minorities to try and help give back to that community. Is that something that you would favor here in Florida as we continue to expand smokable, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely.
I definitely favor it, and it's long overdue. I would say long overdue in this whole discussion about the legalization of medical marijuana, as well as the legalization of marijuana, which may soon come to this state. I don't think we're that far away from becoming the next California, the next Colorado. I think it's a real possibility as we continue to decriminalize marijuana. And please don't ask me to say decriminalize again. I think I got it right, but yeah, there's a lot of syllables in there.
So do y'all want to take an opportunity to talk about stories? We can start with Ernest's story about his grandmother. Because I think that would be interesting, and I apologize that I interrupted. But I think that would be very interesting for the listeners to hear about Ernest's grandmother and why she was mentioned in the speech by President Obama.
I think everyone knows that story because I tell it every single chance I get.
It's a great story.
Hi, I'm Ernest Hooper. Let me tell you about my grandmother. I'm unabashed in sharing that story. So in 2008. My grandmother was 106 years old and had lived in Atlanta, Georgia for 88 years. And when you are 106 and you have lived in the same community for 88 years, you tend to be pretty popular. So when she went to vote for in the presidential election, she went to early vote. It was a scene. The mayor of Atlanta at the time, Shirley Franklin, greeted her. A couple of local TV stations showed up. Hey, this is really cool. A woman who's 106 years old, born in the shadow of slavery, is voting for the man who may become America's first African-American president. Mm-hmm. So it was a local story. CNN's Don Lemon sees the local reports. He's living in Atlanta. He decides to do a national story about my grandmother. Comes out to her house on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard Drive, does a feature on her. People in the campaign for Barack Obama see that feature on CNN. And the Saturday before the election, he actually called to thank my grandmother. And of course, she wasn't home. She was out gallivanting with friends. But he left a message on the answering machine. And so we have sealed that microcassette tape in a hermetic bag. It's been hermetically sealed and it's in a vault somewhere. But so that was the Saturday before the election. On election day, someone from the campaign called and said, hey, Mrs. Cooper, my grandmother, for those of you who don't know, was named Ann Nixon Cooper. Someone from the campaign.
So your family is Cooper and Hooper?
Hooper. My mother only had to change one letter when she got married. And you're really super. Indeed. They called. They said, Mrs. Cooper, if President Obama should be fortunate enough to win tonight, he's going to mention you in his election night speech. And so we all tuned in. We were expecting a mention. I thought he would thank her when he was thanking the other people who helped him win. And he didn't, and he kept going, and he was 14 minutes into the speech. And I thought, well, I guess the new leader of the free world changed his mind and he's not going to mention my grandmother. And then he proceeded to build the last 5 minutes of that speech around her remarkable life and all the things that she had witnessed in history. The Great Depression, the rise of Nazi Germany, VE Day, VJ Day, a bus in Montgomery, a bridge in Selma, a man landing on the moon, the Berlin Wall coming down. And then he challenged every American and he said, if my daughter should be as fortunate to live as long as Ann Nixon Cooper, what changes will they see? What history will we make? That is the challenge before us. For a longer version of the story, feel free to give me a call at the Times. That was the quick version. I got all kinds of side stories that can make this story about 60 minutes long, but I didn't want to take up the whole podcast.
When you were in North Carolina last week, did you tell that story?
I did tell that story. I never pass up on an opportunity to tell that
It's a
story.
great story.
Did I ever tell y'all the time that I had the opportunity to meet Barack Obama and I went to lunch instead?
What?
That's the most white privilege thing I've ever heard in my whole life.
I know it was in 2007. I believe it was the summer of 2007 when he had just become a presidential candidate. And he was in Tallahassee. It was, I believe, the first Florida trip. He was in single digits in the polls. Hillary Clinton was beating the pants off of him. And it was a Friday afternoon, and in the legislature, I don't know if it's still the case, but back then when I was a legislative aide, every Friday we would have lunch in the majority office. And back then I worked up on the 11th floor. My friends and I took the elevator down to the 3rd floor, and right by the elevators is the minority office. Minority office and majority office are kind of close together. As soon as the elevator doors opened, there was a tall guy there standing talking with 5 or 6 staffers from the majority office. And one of them even said, "Hey, Chris, would you like to meet Senator Obama?" I turned around and said, "No, thanks, I'm hungry." And I kept walking. And there is a possibility that the future president heard me say that because we were so close together in terms of space. Looking back on that, it was a great regret because I've never met a president of the United States or had my picture taken with them. And so, but that would have been cool to meet him. I have a friend in Tallahassee that y'all know, Steve Shale, who back then worked for Senator Obama's campaign in Florida, and he tells great stories about President Obama and working for him on the campaign. And we'll have to get him on one day. But he was literally in the room when Barack Obama found out he was going to win the election.
So he was in the room where it happened?
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it was.
That's great. That was,
So-
yeah.
I have a Barack story. So in 2004, I was working for a 527 group. Gore lost Florida by 537 votes in 2000, right? And the groups were called 527s back then, or it's vice versa. I got that backwards. Anyway, but I was working for an outside money group in 2004, and they flew us all to Cleveland, Ohio, to get us all fired up to go bring the election home in a swing state. And the keynote speaker was Barack Obama, and he got up there and killed it. But the first thing he said was, got a lot of people here who are in student government in college. I was never that guy. I was in student government. Didn't really see the point. Didn't think it was a big deal. And like, I was sitting there, I was going, well, I did student government stuff. And, but he kind of made fun of people who were in student government in college. And I was like, that's okay. And it turned out in the long run. But he obviously 2004 Barack Obama. And this was, I think, just after the convention speech that he gave in 2004.
How many of us were in student government in college?
I think all of us.
All
were.
of
I
us
was
were,
not.
except for you.
Really?
Who wasn't?
Yeah, I was not.
Ironically, the guy in real government.
Yeah.
Real government, huh?
And I wasn't in student government in high school either. In high school,
I was an
it
officer in the
because I
Black
didn't make
Student
the-
Union.
the
Does that
grades.
count?
Kind of.
In
yeah.
high school, I had other priorities for extracurricular activities. I was in drama club, for instance, with one of the guys who ended up having a recurring role in A Star in Mad Men. His name is Aaron Staten, and he's done other works on Broadway and in Hollywood. I was in TV production, and also one of the things that I was most proud of is I was in the Alpha and Omega Step Club at Terry Parker High School. In 1999,
You're making that
2000.
up.
I know. I promise
You were in
I
the
was.
step club.
I had the jersey to prove it. They would not let me dance with them because I did not have the rhythm needed. But I was an officer in the step club. I was the public relations director, and I had a jersey that said the Alpha and Omega Step Club on it, and I
That's
would
so
wear
sad.
it to school. And my nickname back then was Saltine, and so the back of my jersey said Saltine. I was very proud of it,
think
and
you
I still may have it somewhere.
Chris, how many subscribers this week do we have to get for you to bust out the Saltine jersey or some photographic evidence of this period?
I think that's our first merch is we should have jerseys with Saltine on the back. I'd buy one. I would buy that shit, wouldn't you?
I might give it. I might give.
And
Some
I
bias.
probably,
buy that.
I probably should look to see if the Alpha and Omega Sub Club is still in existence.
Chris, you are in all of our phones as Saltine, by the way. Just so you know.
That is true. That is how you are on my phone. I was in a lot of clubs, a little more into clubs than I was into the actual classes, but I was in student government. I was an officer in MAD. I was on the President Student Advisory Council. Golly, I mean, I was in yearbook. I was a big thespian, was very active in theater arts, which is what my college degree is in. I mean, golly, I did just about everything.
How many of your ex-boyfriends did your father have to throw in jail?
My father has only sentenced one person that I dated, to my knowledge, and he is a very nice yet troubled person who mismanaged alcohol from a young age. So, but I'm sure my father didn't know that he was somebody who had dated his daughter. But that's a weird Facebook message to get, FYI, from somebody you knew in high school.
Just for play-by-play here, Becca's father is actually sitting right next to us, Judge Raymond Gross, who was one of my professors in college. Carla, one of yours too?
Sure.
Did we have the same class together?
We did.
I think. But Judge Gross taught a couple of my classes and has been a area, and he's just sitting here like leaning back in the chair, I think trying to avoid being on the
pictures.
air. But we're going to actually ask him to come on and grab a microphone right now. Here's the best part about podcasting, Your Honor. If it sucks, we just take it out later. So that's totally fine. You can say anything because if we have to take it out, we take it out.
Thank you for the invitation, Colin.
Well, I mean, do you guys have any questions you want to ask my dad?
Oh, I have a million.
Go.
Talk about sentencing the boyfriend.
He wouldn't know who that was.
No, this is the first time I've ever heard that story, and frankly, I'm glad. One thing that's interesting, you all were talking about the elections and somebody with 48% and so forth. I'm sorry, Chris has walked away because Florida changed its law significantly in the early 1980s, doing away with second primaries. And second primaries brought us some of the best political leaders that would have never been in Florida if they had not had the opportunity to come back after a second primary. Reuben Askew ran a weak second to Earl Faircloth in the 1970 Florida Democratic primary, went on to become a hugely successful two-term governor. Lawton Chiles came in second in the 1970 Democratic primary, served 18 years in the Senate, and was subsequently elected governor twice. Bob Graham came in second to Bob Shevin in the 1978 Democratic primary. Bob Graham distinguished himself as a great governor and a long-term United States senator. Unfortunately, the legislature did away with the second primary, and so the chance for a candidate with fresh new ideas to come to the front was taken away from us, and I think the state is worse for it. And I think among the issues that should be considered is the viability of second primaries. It allows fresh voices to get some legs, and it's amazing how the front runner oftentimes gets all the votes they're ever going to get in that first primary, and the runner-up can coalesce the supporters of everybody else. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's going to happen in the Tampa mayoral election. However, I think that the issue of second primaries is something worthy of further discussion.
You are like speaking my language right now, sir, because so this is an issue that's not just going on in Tampa and throughout the state of Florida. It is an international issue. So if you go right now, I mean, they're having questions about first past the post in Canada and England and how that affects parliamentary elections. People want to support smaller, sometimes fringe candidates, but they feel like they can't because they have to vote in a way that is much more strategic instead of voting what they believe. And those are the type of things that some of these change systems can help, is that, if you go ranked choice, if you really think Jill Stein is going to be, I don't, but if you think Jill Stein's going to be the best president, vote Jill Stein first. And then you can drop down one and say, okay, and if she doesn't win, I'm going to vote for Hillary. And then that way, having Jill go first, well, when she doesn't, she becomes the first candidate off the board, and all of her votes where she's voted number one, they go to that person, whoever is number two on that person's ballot, and you just continue to fall down. This is the way it's going in other countries. It just makes a lot of sense for the process. It is mostly opposed by Republicans. There are some Democrats there, and there are places where it's going to hurt Democrats too. But for the most part, the change to the process, and it's become an international issue, because if we're going to really get candidates that represent the will of the people, just having somebody could have won this mayor's race very, very possibly with 35 to 40% of the vote, if we were in a first past the post system. Now we do have a runoff to get to at least 50% plus one, but there are places that do have Chicago had, what was it, 9 mayoral candidates or something like that, and the top 2 get taken off the board, and a lot of those, or the top 2 go on to the runoff. But there were probably a lot of those 3rd, 4th, 5th place people that people would have been more likely to vote for, but wanted to vote in a strategic way. So. And by the way, they're like great follows on Twitter for this. Like Politics Wolf is great if you want to talk about election process and things like that. Base Ballot's another one if you're on Twitter.
Are there any other Twitter handles you would like to encourage the listeners to follow?
Well, Chris Latvala, I think, at Chris Latvala, Latvala.
Or perhaps the one for our show.
Well, that's going to be in the read here, because we're actually going to do a read for that too. We're going to do a read for all of our stuff.
I was talking about the show one.
Yeah, well, just real quick, when you talk about election reform, I'd like to see the write-in loophole taken away. That's even more troubling. As you know, Chris, in many instances, incumbents and favorite candidates like to lock out people from outside of their party by having a write-in candidate put their name on the ballot. And therefore, it then becomes, if you're talking about Republicans, it becomes a race to the right. And whoever's the most conservative and whoever can brand themselves as the most conservative ends up winning the Republican primary, because Democrats aren't allowed to participate. And I've seen it on the other side too. We've seen some Democrats go and find it'll be between 2 people. There's no Republican challenger, but they will have a write-in candidate on the Republican side so that it becomes a partisan primary. And then it's about branding who's most progressive. And it, what I think we want, particularly in this state, is more moderate candidates, more candidates who are closer to the center. And we would get that if we would eliminate what I call the write-in loophole. And I look forward to you filing a bill to eliminate that on Monday. I'm so glad you're here.
The unfortunate thing is it's past the bill filing deadline, but that is an idea that I support. And I think it's time to change in Florida, and it's quite possible that somebody else has filed that bill. I'm just not sure, because there's been a couple thousand bills that have been filed.
Yeah, Ernest, let me just address what you were saying, because the issue is that if for an election there are only candidates from one party, And so the winner of that election will automatically be elected. The law now is that because this is in effect a general election, members of both parties would be able to vote in that primary. The way people have scooted that exception and allowed them to remain closed is by allowing someone to qualify as a, quote, write-in candidate who will appear on the general election ballot. So I just was trying to clarify or flesh out.
Yeah, I'm not sure I did a great job of explaining it, but
That's why we have a legal scholar.
yes, and we need a legal scholar. And in many cases, Judge, these write-in candidates are shadowy figures that we can barely find their address. Right. They don't campaign. They don't raise any money. They are there literally in name only. Right. It's a scam. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in the open primary, if you will, people registered non-party affiliation also would get to vote, correct?
That is
I mean, that's a very important distinction. Those registered non-party affiliation are making up almost a third of our electorate in the state of Florida.
Yep, that is correct. And, there's anecdotal evidence that these, quote, write-in candidates are recruited by the party seeking to limit the participation in the election. I'm not certain that we have any solid proof of that, but that is certainly the presumption because they are such shadow candidates. They don't appear to have a serious interest in the election, but by serving as a write-in candidate, they are blocking others from voting.
Okay, real quick, let's play two truths and a lie. Okay, you guys know the gist. You give two truths and a lie, and we'll see if we can guess. Who wants to go first?
You go first. Your idea.
Yeah.
Okay, I was originally registered as a Republican. I modeled for Kashi in Canada, and I was on the homecoming court in college and blew off the game and the crowning.
I know that you were never registered as a Republican.
That is an interesting presumption. Does everyone agree?
Yes.
No, I think you were. I think you did it to upset the guy sitting next to me.
What?
Just to be a rebel.
You agree with who, Ernest? Okay, so we have 3 votes that I was never a Republican. One that astutely Colin recognized that I may have been a little bit of a heathen in my adolescence, which is one of the reasons why I'm so empathetic to the youth population. But that is correct. I did blow off the homecoming game, and I did model for Kashi, but I have never been registered except as a Democrat from day one. And I've never missed an election to vote in for the strong candidates in our community.
The Step Club would have been such a good thing to say for this segment.
So, yeah, what are 2 truths and a lie?
I still don't believe you're in the Step Club.
I may have pictures from my yearbook to bring in one day.
Aren't you guys interesting? Come on, 2 truths and a lie. I love this game.
I make my
2
students play this.
2 truths and a lie.
Payback.
I was and remain an avid fan of All My Children. I once appeared on a television show on the ID Discovery Channel. And I once dressed up in a cheerleading uniform for a high school pep rally.
Piece of cake, the TV network. No way.
Anybody else got a guess?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the TV one.
Yeah, me too.
A little too particular.
I'm not very good at this game. They're all true.
They're all true?
They're all true.
Well, that's not fair. I could totally see you being a soap opera lover.
Oh, I used to watch All My Children and One Life to Live
One Life to Live was
religiously.
Oh,
all the
Dorian.
time.
I love that.
Vicky, Dorian, Clint, Bo,
We had a-
Nora,
oh Lord.
Nora were great.
Okay,
Todd.
Chris.
I
Two
love
truths
Todd
and a lie.
Manning.
Todd, he was great. He wanted Emmy for that.
Hold on, we're talking soap operas.
Jeez
Yeah.
Louise.
Can't continue with any other
didn't like the new
podcast
test,
discussion.
though, the new
No,
test. I like the
I
original.
like the original
Yours is cute,
too.
but I do like the original.
Yes, and I still long to meet Erica Kane. I'm hoping
So
Chris can help me with
my
that.
best friend ran into her in a bathroom in Las Vegas.
Shut up.
She did. And she also used to work with her at HSN when she came down to do some stuff at HSN. So she didn't remember her from HSN. But
Chris, do you know anybody at HSN? Can you get me in? Can you get me in to meet Erica
I don't
Kane?
think she's doing. I don't think she's
Oh man, really?
Yeah, no. But she did. My best friend did run into her in a bathroom in Las Vegas. And she said she's very tiny and her skin is perfect.
I bet. So, do you have two truths and a lie?
No, but I'll do it anyway. I once passed out in front of the mayor of Tampa before that person was mayor. I did ballet for 16 years and was never strong enough. My feet were never strong enough to really handle point shoes, so I never really advanced very well. I mean, I could wear them and I could do some stuff, but I was never really, my ankles were really never strong. And I'm trying to like sift through. And I once birthed kittens in my home. I helped to
I was like,
So
a
good. I
little
didn't physically
clarification.
birth- I
I'm
birthed
gonna
in my
go
birth
with the
canal,
kittens.
But I helped kittens be birthed in my home when I was little, 7.
Well, that's too specific.
Yeah. But see, you're a dog person. I don't know if your family was a cat person. So that's really,
I'm going to say you did not pass out in front of someone who went on to become mayor of Tampa.
I'm gonna go with that as well.
I'm going to go with, Chris keeps changing. How political of you. I'm going to go with that too, just because I hope that it's not true.
That is true.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
very true.
Who was it?
I was Pam Iorio, and she still does not remember to this day. Pam, if you're listening, love you, but this is exactly how we met. And so that is true. And I wasn't feeling well. It was a really hot day. And I was running errands
Okay.
for Kathy Castor when I was working for Kathy. And I had to go and meet Pam, and it was just really, really hot outside. And I was young, and I hadn't eaten anything all day. And I think I had like 4 cups of coffee that day. And it was just like 100 and something degrees in the summer. And by the time I had walked up like what seemed like a million flights of stairs to see her, to give her something, it wasn't, I think her air was out or something in the office. And it was just so hot. And I was just so tired from the whole day. And I ended up on the floor.
Was this when she was supervisor?
So she was supervisor, and she was like, "Do you need some water?" And I'm like, "Please."
Okay. So I'm going with the ballet thing is not true then.
No, that's true too.
Really? It's the kittens.
The kittens. Yeah.
I mean, I should have gone with my
You really should
initial
have gone with your
guess.
gut there, buddy. But you didn't.
It was too detailed. Yeah.
But the
I
detailed
thought,
ones are always the lies.
yeah, I thought,
that?
yeah, that's why I thought his TV show was wrong. I didn't think the ballet thing was real because your boobs have been too big. And ballerinas have no boobs.
Well, I didn't say it was good.
That's true. That was the only thing that held me on there.
That'd be a factor in whether she was good or not?
Yeah, like if you get
balance
boobs, your
stuff.
gymnast career's over. You
Yeah.
have trouble being a ballerina because your center of gravity shifts.
Very true.
You learn something new every day.
Yeah, for other types of dance, it's fine. For ballet specifically, it's like about
Yeah, it's hard.
you got to be really skinny. Yeah, like really skinny.
Chris,
It's not just thin. You can't have any
I
like
know. It's just the lines have to be like super.
super
two
straight.
truths and a lie.
I was once arrested, but not charged. I was once kicked out of a high school girls soccer game.
Man, he's like mentioning all these life of crime things. Bad boys, what you gonna do?
And I once almost ran for city council in college.
Man, I don't think you've been arrested.
I don't think you ran for city council.
And I don't think you would tell people if you had. I think you probably considered running for city council,
Yeah,
but didn't.
agreed.
And I could see you getting kicked out of a girls' soccer game because you and your best friends from high school were being silly. But you would not be so blatant about getting arrested unless you'd been arrested for like something really majestic, like protesting, which did not happen.
I'm going to say you've never been arrested.
That is true. I've never been arrested. I did get
That is how you know Chris and I have never dated, is because my dad has not sent him to jail.
I did get kicked out of a high school girls soccer game, and the opposing team, 4 members of the opposing girls soccer team wanted to fight me after the game, but I did not. And then the next year we played the same school, and there was another altercation with the same girls.
Now,
Bad boys.
could Chris and Kent, your ride or die squad from back in the day, verify all these stories?
Kent was not there for the second. Actually, he may have been there the first year that I got kicked out and the girls wanted to fight me. The second year, when the girl and her mother both got in my face, he was not there because he had already graduated. But my other best friend, Chris, who I still keep in contact with today, he was there, and he was blowing the horn during the game, and the mother did not. Terry Parker High School up in Jacksonville.
Bad boys.
You should you should have used as one of your 2 truths and a lie. One of my best friends is a Disney lover and holds some records.
Yeah, rides all the rides in one day, and he's done it like 4 times. But yeah, that would have been a good one.